Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I've been spending the day going through some of this census argument battle, whatever you want to call it, that's been going on, and I found all kinds of documents that relate to it, letters going here and there, flying all over Congress. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to try to distill this as much as I can because there are just so many websites that I have open right now. And I will put all the links down below, but some of them I'm just going to show you that's there and that the link is down below. And I'll let you go to that one and you can read it or watch it or whatever. So anyway, I wanted to start out with the House of Representatives main website. Now, this is the main website that they have. It's kind of a useful site. It's not too bad to maneuver around in, but there's some important information that you can find here. And one of them is over here. It will have things that might be something you'd be interested in watching. Usually it's some kind of video that they're doing, or maybe it's a topic like this is the Lessons from the Mueller Report, Presidential Obstruction and Other Crimes by guess who? Committee on the Judiciary. Jerry Nadler. Yeah, so Jerry's just not real happy about it, and he's going to keep beating that dead horse as much as he can. He's going to try to beat it until we hit November of 2020, I think, but it's not going to bode well for him, I don't think. Anyway, there's also the floor proceedings, recent votes, bills and reports that you can get to. And, there's all different kinds of stuff. And public disclosure of some things. There's some reports down here that you might find interesting. The problem is not that our government isn't putting documents out there. It's that there's such a volume of documents. It's hard for any one person to keep up with it. You need lots of different people going through lots of different sources and looking at them and then compiling their information just to keep track of what's going on. So anyway, there's just, some important links here. One of the biggest links, though, that I find is the committees. But if you don't know who your representative happens to be, you can go here and you can find them either by the state and district or by their last name. And so you can easily find them, and it takes you to their website. I mean, you can actually access their website from clicking on their names. So kind of a handy little thing in case you don't know what your representative is up to. By the way, on their website, there's always a contact form. So you can go in there and you can send like a little email message to your representative. I highly recommend it. Let them know that you're following what's going on and that you understand there's a question about the citizenship question being put on the census and that you support having that question put on there. So go to your representative's page, put that in there, make sure they know where you stand on it. It really does help. You need to make sure that they're aware of what their constituents believe. And right now, from what I've seen, the system they now have set up will only allow their constituents to send emails to any particular House member. Kind of sad in some ways, like if you want to cheer on Jim Jordan or some of these different representatives that have been really stepping forward in the battle, you can't do that through their website anymore. You have to be one of their constituents. You have to put in like an address and everything. So, I recommend that if they're your representative, go in, make sure that they know. If you want to contact any of the others, write them a letter. You can actually still write letters and send them through the mail. They can still receive those. So, cheer them on. Some of these guys are really fighting hard to bring our government back to we the people. So they need to be cheered on. Anyway, of course, you can leadership. You can find a little more information about the current leadership. And then again, like I said, the committees is what I'm going to go to. And the committee that I'm going to access right now is the Oversight and Reform. Now, be aware that the issue I have with the House websites is that when they switch over, like before it was the Republicans in charge and now it's the Democrats in charge. So some of the links that I have in previous videos may not work right because they went to the main committee page and now the main committee page belongs to the other party. So the documents that I link to are still on the Republican side. So now they have a totally different website. So it's like they have a Democrat website, they have a Republican website, and then whoever's in charge gets the main website And it's really confusing. That's what makes a House navigation on their committees and everything. It makes it very confusing. But anyway, so you just go here, and if you don't know what committee your person is part of, you can find them. Like this guy right here is on the Armed Services and Education and Labor. So that's how you can tell what committees your particular representative is assigned to. So very informative, again, like I said. And so when you go to the committees, then you just click on the committee and it will take you to the main page, which right now, currently, is being run by the Democrats. This is going to be oversight and reform, and that's what we're going to go to. So when you click on it, it brings up the oversight and reform page. And again, remember, this is the majority page right now. The Republican one, I think you put Republican-oversight.house.gov. I think that's what the Republican one is right now. Anyway, they have lots of stuff on here. Some of the committees don't put as much stuff on here. Every committee website is different, which I really wish that they were more standardized, because it makes it harder when you're trying to find things. You have to keep looking around a little bit more. Now, I go to certain ones, like the Oversight, the Intel, and the Judiciary are the three that I frequent the most. And so I'm more familiar with how they work. This one's okay. It's one of the better ones. Personally, my favorite to go to is the Senate Judiciary. I mean, they do a really awesome job over there. I like that one a lot. Very easy for me to navigate around. Anyway, so here's all the things that they've been doing, the latest news and different things, memos. We're going to talk about this one, this memo on an undisclosed interview with Kris Kobach. Yeah, there's just so much going on, and it all has to do with the same thing. So anyway, then you can go up here to news, and you can go press releases or letters. Those are the two places I tend to go to, and I can find out a lot of information there. There are subcommittees underneath this main committee. There are subcommittees, and this Civil Rights and Civil Liberties was the one that had that video about the women with the testimony that were survivors from the A word. Really, you know, their testimony was just so moving, wasn't it? I just loved listening to them. They did an excellent job. Anyway, but that was from that one, and there's just different ones that they have. And then they have the hearings. These are the ones, usually a video that you can watch. And then the news has, you know, different things that they can do. And this particular committee does an awful lot of press releases. So when you click on the press releases, you get a lot of the things that they are putting out there. And this committee has a lot of press releases. Some of them don't have near this much. So yeah, you've got all different kinds of things. And again, we're going to talk about this one. We're going to talk about this one. So let's get going on it, because it's crazy what all they have. You know, they just are going off the deep end. And this is run, the head of the oversight right now is Elijah Cummings, and he's having some issues because he didn't disclose that his wife was actually working for some companies that benefited from some of the legislation they were pushing through. And so there's a little ethical issue going on right now with Elijah Cummings. It's still working through. I don't know how it's going to come out, but yeah, he's not totally clean. Anyway, I went to the letters, you know, again, the news down to letters, and look at all these letters. There are letters. And again, this was one of the better sites because they actually do have a good archive of all of these letters. And there's just a bunch of them that are going on, you know, back and forth. And so anyway, this is where I've been getting my information on this particular thing. And we're going to start here with this letter to Wilbur Ross. Well, you know, Wilbur Ross is the Secretary of Commerce. And, you know, he wants to put a question on the census because that's his area. He has to, you know, put together the census. And he wants to put in a question on citizenship. Now, when you read through this, you don't really get a sense of it. But if you watched my last video, you understand that there is more than just one form of the census. They have a long form, a short form, and this community survey that they do. Okay? Now, the citizenship question appears on the long form and on the community survey. But they are giving all this fuss because they don't want it on the short form. It's like, wait a minute, it's on all the others, so what difference, oh, pardon me, what difference does it make to put it on the other form? I mean, they've got it on the other two, so it should make no difference whatsoever. And I really think this is what the Supreme Court is going to rule. But then again, Justice Roberts, we never can count on him for sure. Although in the hearing, he did seem to kind of favor that. So, at least his questions sounded like it. But again, I'm not counting on the man because I thought that before on the whole Obamacare thing. And he disappointed us massively then. So anyway, on this particular article, I'm writing to inform you that the committee is scheduling a vote to hold you in contempt of Congress as a result of your failure to comply with a bipartisan subpoena issued more than 2 months ago for documents relating to the addition of a citizenship question to the 2020 census. Okay, so I saw, bipartisan. Well, let's go. Committee approves subpoenas in security clearance and census investigations. Look at this. One Republican committee member voted in favor of the census-related subpoenas. And without going and actually watching the hearing and listening to them vote, which I didn't really have time to do because I was doing all the rest of this, I don't know who that person was. And I don't know who all is on this committee. You can actually find out. You can go here and you can find out who all's on it. But, yeah, so it was one person, but that made it bipartisan. At least that's what Elijah Cummings keeps saying. I guess he thinks if he says it enough, it'll make it true. But it really was not bipartisan. It was one person voted with the Democrats on that. And who knows why they did. I don't know. Again, I'd need to know who it was. Unfortunately, your actions are part of a pattern. The Trump administration has been engaged in one of the most unprecedented cover-ups since Watergate, extending from the White House to multiple field agencies and departments of the government and across numerous investigations. You can just almost see the man's face getting beet red as he's saying this. Sometimes I worry about these guys. It's like their head's going to just pop off. They got this tie tied around their neck and the white collar and everything. And I think it's just strangling the blood going to their brain or something. I don't know. Anyway, he goes on and he says, the tactics of this cover-up are now clear. Dun, dun, dun. You need the music going with it. The administration has been challenging Congress's core authority to conduct oversight under the Constitution, questioning the legislative basis for congressional inquiries, objecting to committee rules and precedents that have been in place for decades under both Republican and Democratic leadership, and making baseless legal arguments. Okay, now I covered a few of those, and they were not baseless. Arguments to avoid producing documents and testimony. Okay, this guy he's really going crazy here. And when he says Congress's core authority, here is what's really going on, folks. This is a battle. We are watching this huge battle between one branch of our government and another branch of our government. Right now, our House of Representatives believe that they are as powerful as our president. Well, they need to remember that they're only half of Congress. They're not all of Congress. And so he thinks that they have the right to scrutinize absolutely everything the executive branch does. Well, they do have rights to oversight, but oversight does not mean that you question every decision the president makes. And that's what they're doing. And this right here, they're questioning the Secretary of Commerce. That's what they're doing. They're saying, well, he did this for nefarious reasons. And really, the whole thing comes down to, I don't care what your reason is for putting a question on the census saying, are you a citizen? I think, frankly, it doesn't matter what your motivation is, because when it comes down to it, we need to know that. That's part of what the census was supposed to do. It's supposed to provide us with that data. And while it's fine that it includes people who are not citizens, that's fine to include them in the census, but there needs to be a point in that census where we define the data that comes from our citizens and the data from people who are not our citizens. There should be a difference between them, right? Well, I think you probably agree with me, but the Democrats are not agreeing right now. And so he goes on. This cover-up is being directed from the top. Several weeks ago, President Trump vowed publicly, we're fighting all the subpoenas. Why? Because they are trying to usurp the presidency. They're trying to take control of the executive branch. And this really is why the deep state is so mad. Because as long as they had the presidency, they could pretty much do whatever they wanted to. But now that they're not in control of the executive branch, they are in panic mode because the executive branch can't be bullied into doing other stuff. It's not supposed to be able to. And so Trump is standing up. Not just him, but all of his people. And that's why he is now starting to exert the executive privilege. He couldn't do it before the Mueller report came out. He had to have that come out first. And now that that's out, it exonerated him. Of course, they don't think so. But, it said no collusion, no corruption. And so it should all be in the past, but it's not. And we know, if you have any liberal friends, you've heard them say it. And it really boggles my mind that the Washington Post is making money off of publishing that document. I don't understand how they can do that. I don't understand how Mueller and Alan Dershowitz can put out a version of it. Can I publish a version of it? Because it's a government document. Can't I put it out there? And I'll be happy to take the money from people. If you want to buy my version of the Mueller report, hey, go for it. I just don't understand that. It makes no sense that Mueller could make money off of selling the Mueller report. And his name's on it, and so is Dershowitz. So I don't know who's getting the money there, but somebody is. And then the Washington Post has a version out. I don't know if the New York Times does or not, but the Washington Post has a version out, and they're getting money for that too. It's how can they do that? I don't know. Surely there's got to be some kind of law against doing that kind of thing, but maybe not. I don't know. I'm, not all up on all the legal stuff in regards to that, but we're fighting all the subpoenas. Since then, he has refused to work on legislative priorities such as infrastructure until Congress halts all oversight and investigations of his administration. Now, that's not true. He's not halting everything. He's saying it's not that Congress has to halt all oversight and investigations, but they have frivolous investigations going on right now. Those need to stop. And this is one of them. Honestly, this whole thing about the census question is one of those bogus things that's going on. And, here they say, well, Trump said it was all about Russia and this is not true. And, he just goes on, really, this whole thing. He goes on and he says, as the committee has explained repeatedly, we are investigating, among other matters, the actual reasons behind the Trump administration's decision to add a citizenship question to the 2020 census. Once again, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it's not why you're putting it on there. What matters is that a legitimate question to put on there? Yes, it is. Because I'll tell you what, if the Supreme Court would happen to rule that they can't put that on there, which I don't think they're going to, but if they would happen to, then we're in trouble because any group that wants to challenge any question on the census will be able to do that. And right now, of course, we have a male-female question. What happens if you get a bunch of people say, I don't want to be male or female, I want to be something else? As Mark Dice says, I want to be peanut butter, like you can do on Facebook. You can put in whatever you want for your gender. Any word under the sun you can put in there. And so, what if somebody does that? They get a group, they do that, they complain about it, and poof, we've got no more questions on the census. The whole point of the census is so we can get this data, because this data is how they appropriate money to these people that need it and to these districts. And of course, it has to do with how many in the House of Representatives. How many representatives do you get? That all has to come from the data in the census. Well, this is why the Democrats are so adamant against it, because they know that if this question is put on there, they're going to lose some representatives. And they are going to be put in other districts that are more Republican. And they don't want that. Of course, they want to keep hold of the House. And so that's what's really going on. The Democrats are claiming this is going to lead to the Republicans gerrymandering so that they can win from here on out. And that's simply not what the case is. But, it all has to do with, is that a valid question? And the main reason they're talking about it is because of the Voting Rights Act. Will this help us have a better idea of how many voters we have? I say yes, it definitely will. But they go through, and he mentions this guy named Hofeller, Thomas Hofeller. Well, he was a Republican, and they call him a gerrymandering expert. No, he was somebody who just was really good at looking at districts and processing data and figuring out that, there were certain anomalies, certain problems with our current census because there was a group of people that we didn't have adequate information on. And that would be about 35 million either illegals or people who were not being counted in our census. Not necessarily illegal. They may be legal citizens or they may be here legally but not citizens, which, you can do that too. And that's not a problem, but they were not being counted in the census. So there were approximately, from what I understood as I was listening to that whole, the arguments and everything, it seemed like they said there were 35 million who were not being included in that they did not have administrative data about. And the claim was that from the Democrats that they needed to use the administrative data in order to find out how many more people we had. But we had a lot of people that weren't included in that administrative data. And they're afraid that if they put this out there with that question on it, that 5-point-something% of those Hispanics won't finish filling out the census. And so they won't have accurate data. Well, it's like 5% of, I don't know, it ends up being about 6 million people. Okay? So in my opinion, from what I understand of it, they're saying we don't have sufficient information. We don't really have administrative information on 35 million. But if we put this out there, then 6 million are going to slip through the cracks and we won't have any data on them. Okay, I think it sounds to me like it's better to have information on, 35 million than it is to have that 6 million. And so if you're talking about right now, we're missing 35 million. Why is saying we're going to miss 6 million so much worse of a catastrophe and makes it so much less accurate than if we're missing 35 million? I don't know. It just kind of boggles my mind what's going on, that they are playing games and, the American people are losing out. Anyway, I'm not going to finish reading this because he goes on, and basically he really jumps on this whole Hofeller thing. Well, the Hofeller thing, let me see if I can find it. Well, the whole Hofeller thing came out thanks to, guess who? The New York Times. Yeah. And this was their article. I think this was on the 7th. Came out. Oh, May 30th. Sorry. And deceased GOP strategist hard drives reveal new details on the census citizenship question. Well, what happened was this guy died in August of 2018. And his daughter, who hated him because she was a progressive. And I mean, down here at the bottom, let me see if I can get this, what she said. Okay, Miss Hofeller described herself as a political progressive who despises Republican partisanship, but also has scant respect for Democrats. So she despises Republicans, essentially. And I know it says partisanship there, but really it means she despises Republicans. Remember, this is the New York Times. And, her father, she said, was a brilliant cartographer who was deeply committed to traditional conservative principles like free will and limited government. As a child, she said, she was schooled in those same principles, but every successive gerrymandered map, and it's really the Democrats that are doing the gerrymandering, really, when they get a chance, he created only solidified her conviction that he had abandoned them in a quest to entrench his party in permanent control. He had me with the idea that we are made to be free, she said, and then he lost me. I mean, okay, This girl did not even see her father for years. Okay? She didn't see him for years. She didn't even know the guy had died until just recently. And somehow she saw it like mentioned somewhere that he had died. So she goes back to her mother, someone she's not seen for years. And she ends up helping her sort through things. And she finds this bag with these hard drives in it. I mean, who puts a bunch of hard drives in a plastic bag? It just sounds so fishy to me. But anyway, she found it. And yeah, his estranged daughter discovered hard drives in her father's home that revealed something else. Mr. Hofeller had played a crucial role in the Trump administration's decision to add a citizenship question to the 2020 census. And so now they're trying to say that this guy was the whole reason and that it was a plot by the Republicans to try to gerrymander everything so they could control our government for years in the future. They don't like it that Trump won. I made it simple for you. They're still ticked off that Trump won. And remember, this is New York Times. They're going to paint it so that Trump is the bad guy and this Hofeller guy was evil and that he's the whole purpose behind this, and it was his work that has done this. Now, something else I want to show you. Again, down here at the bottom, and I'll tell you what, when you read things like from the New York Times and the Washington Post, sometimes it's really good to scroll to the bottom early on and see what their last few paragraphs are, because they tend to put things that are more truthful at the bottom, so that, or things that may give out that the rest of the article was kind of a hit piece. So I tend to read the bottom. Well, this is very interesting because it says a version of this article appears in print on May 31st, 2019 on page A1 of the New York edition with the headline. Now, see, they put different headlines out there for different editions of their physical newspaper. Yeah, they have different headlines depending on where you're at. Well, the New York edition had the headline, Files Disclose Partisan Hand in 2020 Census. Yeah, so it's just kind of interesting. And then this is what they chose to use on their website. So just, reveal new details. They're just manipulating people by their words. And I wish I could emphasize this enough. As a writer, I'm trying to get this out to people that they understand how the media is manipulating us with their word choices and how they put things together, and especially like headlines, because believe it or not, a portion of people will only see a headline and that's what they assume to be true, and they make up in their mind what that headline means and they run with it. Then there are other people who will only read the first 3 paragraphs. So as you go through, notice that the first 3 paragraphs are really negative on Trump and trying to make it say that, after months of urging President Trump's transition team to tack the question onto the census, he wrote the key portion of a draft Justice Department letter claiming the question was needed to enforce the 1965 Voting Rights Act, the rationale the administration later used to justify its decision. So, they try to paint him as bad in these first 3 or 4 paragraphs. And then the closer you get to the end, the more you will kind of see truths come out. And sometimes they will say things that totally blow away what they said at the top if you read down far enough, and it totally negates like everything that they just said. But they bury it way down there because they know very few people will read that far. And the people who do are people who have the same point of view usually as the New York Times, except for those of us like me who do that anyway. So anyway, so that's the article. That's what they're referring to. And it's really disturbing to me that so much of our government and, our Congress and even our Supreme Court, they're making rulings and things on New York Times articles. I mean, articles out there that anyone can write and say anything and say, well, a highly placed source told me. And yet, who knows if it's true or not? We don't have any idea. But that's what our government is basing its decisions on? Ugh. This is what happened with the dossier. They had that article that, Christopher Steele gets with the guy from Yahoo News and gives him this information, and then they turn around and point at it and say, it's got to be true because there it is in the news. So this is really concerning that they are using the news, the media, the biased media to be making their decisions in our government. And I can't believe this. This is their investigation. This is how Elijah Cummings investigates things. He reads the New York Times. That's where he gets his info from. So that's the whole article and thing that they're talking about with Hofeller. That's the situation. And, they're just saying last week they found this out because what? They found it in the New York Times. So it's like they're taking everything the New York Times says as gospel truth without anything else to back it up. And by the way, that daughter, what she did was, as soon as she saw what these documents were, she ran to this little Democrat-funded organization to get the word out. Yeah. So I've been to their website. Yeah, Common Goal or something like that. So, yeah, and of course now we have a subpoena because they just live on subpoenas. And so they have a subpoena for Wilbur Ross to go in and talk. Well, Wilbur Ross doesn't want to agree to the subpoena, and he doesn't plan on showing up, which they're really ticked about. Well, there's another letter to AG Barr. Yep, it says almost the same thing. Really, it does. I mean, this whole thing, and they're saying, yeah, these people are not going to be showing up, and to defy another bipartisan subpoena. Yeah, bipartisan. One guy, one Republican guy, and I'm pretty sure it was the same on this too. So, yeah, the subpoenas, I don't know who that person is, but I'm going to do some digging later on, see if I can find out. Because, yeah, it's disgusting. And I don't know again, I haven't looked at who all is on this committee, so I don't know who the possible turncoat is. But, unfortunately, your actions are part of a pattern. Didn't he say that in this last letter? Yeah. Unfortunately, your actions are part of a pattern. It's like the same letter. For the most part, I mean, he copied and pasted a bunch of stuff. And we're fighting all the subpoenas. Again, Trump vows stonewall of all House subpoenas. That's again by the New York Times. They just hate Trump. They really do. So, anyway, it goes on. This one is the same thing. It's saying if you don't turn over these documents, we will find you in contempt. So, I don't think Barr is going to be scared of them. And I don't think Wilbur Ross is going to show up for the subpoena either. So this is another one. This is from the White House here. And this is to Elijah Cummings after he sent some letters. Now, this seems to be unrelated unless you know some things I'm going to tell you in just a minute. Kris Kobach, who was the Kansas Secretary of State, is somebody that they're focusing on because they're trying to get him to admit that the citizenship question was purely on there so the Republicans could redistrict things and end up gaining seats in the House that way. And that's not why Kris Kobach even suggested it in the first place, because he was on this committee. Or commission, Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity. And this was formed at, May 11th, 2017. And it lasted until January 3rd, 2018. And he was, although Mike Pence was really the chair of the commission, Kris Kobach was the vice chair and really the person who kind of ran it. So, because Pence has a lot of other duties he has to do. So Kris Kobach was the one running it. And so they had this group, they were looking into all these voting rights. They were trying to figure out how can we ensure a free and honest election? And, what do we need to do to eliminate voter fraud? How can we find voter fraud? They were working with all of this stuff. And the problem they had was that they went to the states and they asked the states to give them their voter registries. Well, these voter registries can be purchased by like the DNC and the RNC, and other organizations can purchase these and they get them without a problem. So like if you're on the voter roll and you're a registered voter, yeah, your name can be sold to somebody so they can send you a bunch of junk mail and whatever the case is. Well, when Kris Kobach and this commission wanted to get that information, they wouldn't give it to him, because what they were going to do is they were going to take these lists and they were going to compare them to immigration lists. And so they were going to find if there are people that are illegal and they're registered as voters. That's what they were going to do. Well, of course, that sent the Democrats' heads spinning. And I actually did a video about this a long, long time ago. It was right around the election, I think right after the election. And it had to do with a few other things about whole voter fraud thing. But they disbanded this committee because the Democrats threw such a hissy fit about this that they ended up putting this committee under the Department of Homeland Security. Now, the interesting thing about this is this was a brilliant move, because as long as it was this commission, it was under high public scrutiny. Once it got put under the DHS, then the scrutiny was no longer the same level, because the DHS allowed it more of a protection. So I don't think Kris Kobach is part of it anymore, but I think that it has gone into the DHS and it is still working. I don't know exactly what it's doing, and I think that if they can possibly do it, then they will surely, yeah, see, there were lawsuits and everything. I think that possibly if they can do it, I think they will likely be comparing those voter rolls. So the voter rolls can be cleaned up, especially in some states where we know illegals are voting. So I wanted to point that out to you. That is why Kris Kobach is so important to these people. This is where they ordered him to show up. And, the committee requests your appearance for a transcribed interview. Well, actually, he didn't have to show up. I think he could do it by phone. And I think that's what he ended up doing by phone. But the interview will address the addition of a citizenship question to the 2020 census. And see, again, what they're trying to do is say, why did they put it on there? It doesn't matter why they put it on there. What matters is this a legitimate question to have on our census? That's the question. And when they do this other stuff, it's really just smokescreen. That's all it is. And I got to show you this. Let me go back here because I want to show you this. They have comments down here. And interestingly, the New York Times picks a few of them. And I wanted to show you the second one. The Constitution, because this guy is saying what I would say right here, William Case. The Constitution does not recognize political parties or assign them a role in the government. Therefore, the Supreme Court should not consider what impact asking the citizenship question on the 2020 census might have on the Republican Party or Democratic Party. The only question should be whether the United States has a vested interest in knowing how many citizens it has. The constitutional purpose of the decennial census is to determine proportional representation in the House of Representatives. Since representatives are supposed to represent Americans who elect them to office, not foreign nationals who can't vote, we need to know the number of Americans who reside in each state. And this sentence is a little weird. Let me see. The questions should be used to draw voting district maps, regardless of whether it benefits Republicans or Democrats. And no, this does not mean foreign nationals residing legally in the United States, and unauthorized immigrants will not be counted. The Census Bureau even counts the number of unauthorized migrants held in ICE detention centers and child care facilities. When households do not return the census forms, census takers knock on their door. I almost worked for the census once, and yes, that's what they were going to train us to do. They were going to train us to go out if the census was not returned from that particular address. You had to go out and talk to the people in person. And you had to get information from them. It's not an option. I mean, you can't just say, I'm not going to do the census. You must do it and you must send it in, or you will have people pounding on your door and you can actually be arrested because it's illegal not to turn it in. What the Democrats are trying to say is that if they put this question on there, then the people who are Hispanics, or if they have someone who's illegal in their household, they won't fill it out. And it's like, Well, what good does it do us if we're not getting a count of our citizens? That's the whole point of the census. And you need to know how many are citizens, how many are here legally but not citizens, and how many are here illegally. We need to get a grasp on this. And the Democrats are desperately trying to keep this from happening because they know if they let this go and it happens, they're going to lose majorly. And that's really what it comes down to: money, 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 and control and power. So I wanted to point that out to you. Anyway, you can go through and you can read this. This is from the White House, and it basically gives the reasons why Kobach could go and he could talk to him, but the president was going to exert executive privilege, and Kobach would not be able to answer any of the questions that had to do with what he discussed with the president. And again, this is the same thing they keep saying. The White House keeps telling the Democrats, you cannot ask people what they discussed with the president. You can't. It's privileged. That is something that is not allowed. And see, again, we're seeing this big battle between the executive branch and the legislative branch. The legislative branch certainly does have oversight, but they do not have the right to be able to question all the president's decisions. They just don't. They can impeach him, and they certainly have the right to do that if they want to, but they cannot scrutinize all of his decisions in this way. It's just not proper. And so they keep saying you've got to have a legislative reason if you want these documents, and you provide us with a legislative reason, and then we will, we'll provide them, or we'll discuss providing them. But when it comes to discussions with the president and helping him make decisions, sorry, you just cannot do that. That's going to be privileged. You cannot have it. Of course, Obama did this all the time, and it was never big news, but, have Trump do it. Oh, no, can't do that. So you can see the whole memorandum if you want to about Kobach here, and he kept saying, no, I'm not going to respond. He actually, down at the bottom, they give some of the transcripts of it. And he kept saying, I'm not able to say that. He said he did meet with the president and Bannon, and he said that, yes, we did discuss it. And that's all the further he could go, because that was public knowledge. And that was from the Kansas City Star that he said that. And then after that, they were asking more, and he just kept saying, well, I'm sorry, I can't talk about that, And the witness counsel, of course, he had counsel. Were there meetings about this issue after that set of meetings? And the witness counsel jumped in and said, okay, he's not going to answer a question about this issue, meaning census question discussion. That's privileged information. And they just didn't want to take no for an answer. I mean, they kept pressing him. So, yeah, that's the article there. And again, I will put links to all of these down below. As I said, there's so many different ones, but I want to make sure that you catch some of these. This was on census citizenship questions. Supreme Court's conservatives appear united. Now, this came out the day after they had the hearing of it, the oral arguments. Actually, it came out the day of, because it was on the 23rd. And according to this from the New York Times, they were talking like, yeah, it sounds like the conservatives, who have the majority, grrr, you could just almost hear their gritted teeth, will probably vote for it. And so I think that's probably what's going to happen. But again, I don't count anything out when it comes to Chief Justice Roberts. Yeah. Anyway, then I'm going to include this link down below. I'm not going to play it for you, but here's where this guy, this is the ACLU lawyer, Ho, and I think he's the one that said that it's really going to only affect 6 million people. And he makes it sound like 6 million is so many. But when you're talking about all these people we don't have documentation for, and then 6 million is a very small percentage. And I don't know, they keep talking about 22 point something million too. So I don't know. I think 22 point some million is what they would end up getting. And the 6 million are the ones who would not end up filling it out totally. Well, when you look at that and you're talking about all the people that there are in the United States, 6 million is really not that many. And we need to have the other data that we really don't have now because nobody's put that on the questionnaire since what, 1950s? So it's been a long time. It's time that we found out just how many citizens we actually have. And one of them, I think it was Gorsuch, pointed out that, yeah, all of these other countries, the UN even says it's a good thing to do. And all these other countries have census like this where they ask if they have, somebody's a citizen or not. So why shouldn't the U.S.? So anyway, I'll put the link to this down below. I'm not going to play any of it because it's annoying. But yeah, they kind of chatter on. And this lady right here was from New York. And oh my goodness, she almost got like enraged about it. Like, we have to stop this. We have to stop it. Oh, we can't let this happen. The world will end. Yeah. Well, and the world would end in some ways because New York would receive a lot less money. And so would California. And that's why there are two that are really upset about it because they know that they have large illegal populations. And they want to get money for those. And if there's a citizenship question, the chances are very good that when the money starts being doled out, they're not going to get it. So that's what is at the heart of all this. And I can't believe that it is as big a deal as it is. But it will be decided by the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court should be coming out with that decision in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So be alert for it. Be prepared. I really am hoping and praying that the conservatives do what's right because there's absolutely no reason from a constitutional point of view. There's no reason why there shouldn't be a citizenship question on all the forms, all of the census forms, whether it's the long form, the short form, or, this survey that they do. If the government's going to be doing that, we need to make sure that there is a section there that defines who is a citizen, who is not a citizen, and we find out how many of each we have. So anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one. Lots of links down below. So go through and, check them out and see what's there. And I know it was long, but there's so much to this one. And I wanted to make sure that I got all the information in there and maybe watch that other video of mine where I talked about the commission and the things that they were doing on the voter fraud issue. I still think that it's very possible that they allowed the Democrats to do their regular voter fraud type stuff in the 2018 election so that they could trap them. I mean, then they would have information and they'd have actual data to back up this whole idea of voter fraud. I think that commission is still active, but it's under DHS now. And I haven't heard any real reports about it. I haven't had time to go look for it, but I think it's still active and I think they're still trying to find out ways to fix the voting system so that we eliminate illegals and non-citizens from voting. So anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by. And I'll see y'all later.